So today we're going to talk about two infamous creatures from Bible, and both of these creatures appear in the same book, that is the book of Job. So we'll start with the first one, which is Behemoth, right? And he appears in Job chapter 40 and verse 15, and it reads, "Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee, he eateth grass as an ox." Now, one thing that people could agree on with Behemoth, right? Because there's a lot of disagreement about what he actually is. But the one thing they could agree on is that he is some sort of large creature or large beast, okay? And it's led a lot of people to assume that he's some sort of hippopotamus or rhino or elephant, right? And the reason they say this is because it's an animal that is being shown to Job, right? So it's based on the evolutionary mindset that certain animals did not live with human beings, and therefore it has to be some animal that lived with a human being. Hence, an elephant, a hippo, or a rhino. But when we look at verse 17, it says, "He moveth his tail like a cedar." Okay? So his tail is like a tree. That's right. That's what a cedar is, like a tree. Now, I never saw an elephant or a rhinoceros or a hippo with a tail like a tree. So you could, just from a few verses down, you could see that it's not a hippo, a rhinoceros, or an elephant, right? Because they don't have tails that move like a cedar. Okay, so then the question comes, what does have a tail like a tree, right? And let's move away from the evolutionary mindset that certain animals were extinct before man ever existed, right? So some creationists suggest that Behemoth could be a dinosaur, right? Which would make sense, right? Because what we know about dinosaurs is that they could have really long tails, right? Especially ones with the big long necks like the Bronchiosauruses and such. So it could also be a dinosaur because they have tails like cedars. And it would make more sense, right? Think about it. When God is speaking to Job in this passage, he's trying to show the greatness of his creation, right? Would he really show some hippo or rhinoceros? I mean, it would make more sense that he would show a dinosaur. But is he really a dinosaur, right? Let's go on to verse 19, which says, "He is the chief of the ways of God. He that made him can make his sword to approach him," right? So some dinosaur is chief of the ways of God. That doesn't really make sense, right? So who could this be in reference to? Okay, right? So we're going to go to the book of Ezekiel, right? The book of the prophet Ezekiel. We're going to go to chapter 28. So Ezekiel 28. And we read here in verse, which verse? It's verse 15, right? It says, this is in reference to Satan. Okay? So we'll start with verse 14. "Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have said thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire." So this is in reference to Satan. And in verse 15, "Thou was what? Perfect in thy ways from the day thou was created, till inequity was found in thee." So we see here that this is in reference to the previous verse about being chief among the ways of God. And we see here that Satan was perfect in his ways. So, another thing we could look at, let's go back to Job. Okay, so we'll go back to the book of Job and we'll look at verse 15 again. And it says what? "Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. He eateth grass as an ox." So he's being compared to an ox, right? So we just read in Ezekiel that in chapter 28, remember, how Satan was a cherub, or he was one of the cherubim, right? We just read that. So if we look back in the book of Ezekiel, and we go to the first chapter, right? We go to the first chapter in Ezekiel, and we look at verse 10. And it says, as for the likeness of their faces, they therefore had the face of a man and the face of a lion on the right side, and therefore had the face of a what? Of an ox. So we see here that a cherub had the face of an ox, and in the other chapter in Ezekiel it says that he was the anointed cherub. So we see in here that Satan is likened to an ox, as is Behemoth. So we see here that there's a possibility that this isn't Behemoth, is in reference to Satan, but is when we look at the next chapter about Leviathan where we get confirmation. Okay, so we go on to Leviathan, and in Job 41:1, canst thou draw Leviathan with a hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down? So again, the people will look at this and think it's like some sort of crocodile or whale, and even the creationists will say it's some kind of aquatic dinosaur, like a plesiosaur or something like that. But there's, again, a lot of issues with that. So if we look at the book of Psalms, okay, we look at the book of Psalms and Psalms number 74, right? Psalms 74 on verse what? Verse 14. Thou breakest the heads of who? Leviathan. It says the heads, plural. Therefore, Leviathan has more than one head. I'm not sure if you ever saw a crocodile or a dinosaur with more than one head. And don't send me some picture of some gecko with two heads and say how that's proof, right? So he says he has several heads. And it also makes sense, again, God is showing the greatness of his creation. Would you really show Job a crocodile and feel as if he's accomplished something great? Not really, no. We also see here in verse 34 of Job 41. He is beholden of all high. He is king over all the children of pride. King over all children of pride. You ever see some dinosaur or crocodile being the king of all children of pride? I didn't think so. Okay, so let's go in the same book again to Job 26. Right, so remember the king of the children of pride. And we see here in verse 26 chapter 26 and verse 13. And it says, by his spirit he had garnished the heavens, and he had found and formed the crooked serpent. Right, that's verse 13. Okay, so we look here in verse 12. And it says, he divided the sea with his power, and by his understanding he smiteth through the what? Pride. By his spirit he had garnished the heavens. His hand had formed the crooked serpent. So remember that word, the crooked serpent. Okay? So where again we're going to see about the crooked serpent? Let's go to Revelation, the book of Revelation. Book of Revelation 12. And we look here at verse 9, and it says, and the great dragon who was cast out, that what? Old serpent, called the devil and Satan. So we see here that the crooked serpent is the dragon, is devil, and is Satan. So remember the terminology they're using here. And we'll go to the book of Isaiah. We see here in chapter 27 and verse 1, in that day the Lord with his sore and great and strong sword shall punish who? Leviathan, the piercing serpent. Even Leviathan, who? That crooked serpent. And he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. So we see here from all the references throughout the chapters, the dragon, crooked serpent, Leviathan, Satan, the devil, all the same person. Okay, so we have clarification here of who Leviathan is. Leviathan is Satan. He's not a type of Satan, he is Satan. And finally, to go back with Behemoth, remember in the same verse 27:1, it says that he'll use his great and strong sword and to punish Leviathan, right? So he's going to use his sword to punish Leviathan. And we'll return back to chapter 40 with Behemoth. Okay? And of course, we will read verse 19 again from previous. Right? He is chief amongst the ways of God. He that made him, which is God, can make his sword to approach unto him. This is in reference to Behemoth. So we see that Behemoth, like Leviathan, will be destroyed by God with his great sword. So this is clearly in reference to Satan as well. So both Behemoth and Leviathan are references to Satan. Okay? And what's going to happen to these great creatures, to Satan himself? Well, we'll go firstly back to Job 41, and we will read verse 9. And it says, "Behold, the hope of him is in vain." This is in reference to Leviathan, right? So I don't think God will be referring to some crocodile and saying how his hope is in vain, or the dinosaur, because his hope will be in vain, maybe because he went extinct or something like that. But we saw and we proved through the text that this is in reference to Satan. And what's going to happen to him? We read in Revelation chapter 20 and verse 10. "And the devil that deceived them was cast into where? The lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever." Now, we could say amen to that.